anyway.
All right. Love you. Bye. Yeah.
The idea of this road trip all started because of Jeff's grandparents deciding to generously gift us their car. So the plan was to fly out to California, where they lived, pick up the car, and drive it back to Minnesota. Jeff spent a long time planning this 2-week road trip. Along the way, we visited family, camped, hiked, ate some good food, and visited places in the West we hadn't been to before. This is our trip.
Have a T-shirt in his wardrobe?
No. Old,
I didn't get a lot recorded on day 2, but it was spent mostly going to church, eating some lumpia, and spending time with Jeff's family in California.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom?
No, just have fun.
Thanks, Lolo.
Here begins our road trip. You can see that it was pretty cloudy in California as we were leaving. Driving the new 2017 car was awesome, as we had just graduated from driving a 2002 Ford Escape. Thanks again to the Lowe's for their generous gift. Our first stop of the road trip was Lake Tahoe. We ate at a Korean fried chicken place for lunch, got some coffee thanks to my generous 4th grade students, and then we were off on our first hike in Tahoe.
Pretty out of character.
Oh, it didn't quite crack.
Big crack.
Day 4, we checked out of our Tahoe Airbnb and hiked Monkey Rock Trail before we hit the road to get to our next destination.
I think you're supposed to go take a picture with it, though.
Oh! Oh my goodness, there it is.
Monkey.
At the bottom of the hike was a breakfast cafe, so we stopped in for some food before we hit the road for another 5 hours. This was the first time we had to fill up for gas. It was $6.79 in California, so $5.99 sounds good to me. It was very desert-like along the way. We arrived at Elko, Nevada around 4 p.m. The next morning, we stopped at Walmart to get a few camping supplies. We filled up again, more coffee, and we are headed off to Lamoille Canyon, which was only 30 minutes away. They call this canyon the mini Swiss Alps. This is my favorite destination of the trip. Before checking into our campsite, we went on a 3-mile hike up the mountain.
Then let me run up ahead and get.
Throw it in the lake. Here's a tour of our campsite. We've got this parking spot, little staircase down, and then we've got our private little cove. Look how cute this is.
This is the best campsite. Look at it.
Oh my goodness. And then here's our view. Wow.
This is awesome.
Steel Inquisitor would have been sent to you in your place. Trusty nodded slowly.
What do you mean careful? That little twerp gnawed through and ate some of the buns. This morning, we packed up our campsite and headed to the Lamoille Lake hike, which was a 3.7-mile hike in the mountain. Look. After we finished our hike, we drove out of Lamoille Canyon, another cup of coffee, and we are headed to Idaho Falls, which was a 5-hour drive. Price of gas went up 20 cents, got some McDonald's fries as a snack, arrived at our Airbnb, went out for Mexican food, and ended the night with some frozen yogurt. We woke up the next morning and drove 2.5 hours to Teton National Park in Wyoming. We stopped at this Target in the mountains along the way. Here's the site. This parking spot, table, fire pit, and it's probably a tent right there. Today we spent the day driving a 40-mile loop around the national park and stopping along the way for short walks and scenic views. Looks very rainy.
That pine tree.
They're both singing.
We ended the day with a drive to the sunset. The next morning, we packed up and headed out to the Black Hills to meet my parents in their RV. This was the longest drive of the trip, 7.5 hours. We listened to a lot of podcasts. We stopped at Fuzzy's Tacos for lunch and filled up for gas at $4.75. We then stopped in Spearfish for some ice cream and to meet my parents. Then we headed to our Airbnb in the rain, went back to Spearfish for some pizza, saw a double rainbow, and then ended the night with some neighborhood fireworks. The next morning, we left the Airbnb, and before checking into our campsite, we went on a 3-mile hike to Sturgis Reservoir. This was our campsite at Pactola Reservoir. As you can see, we are at a site for both RVs and tents.
I'm sure.
The fire.
Oh no.
We all surrounded the fire. He was at the perfect moment. Did I tell you that?
We spent most of day 11 at Mount Rushmore and driving through Custer State Park. We were all packed up and on our way to visit Auntie Sue before we headed back to the Twin Cities.
I wanted to show you, this is what I got when I. No.
Bye.
It was a 5-hour drive back home, and that was the end of our trip.